All right, welcome to Weather God's Wisdom, where we talk about weather. But right now, we're only talking about the tropics because I want to talk about the tropics, and this stuff over here in the America doesn't really, matter that much because it's just kind of rain. There's nothing crazy going on here. So, and believe me, we will get into the severe weather season pretty soon. I plan on making this an all-year thing, but today we're going to talk about Hurricane Jerry in here. This large tropical wave that is moving towards the islands and is now Invest 99L. And we also have another emerging, very strong wave that's coming off that has a pretty deep moisture layer that's ahead of it. So will likely be a very strong hurricane that probably recurves out to sea. So we're not going to talk about that much. But we're also going to talk about Hurricane Lorena, which is in the Eastern Pacific. And you can see here, this storm is really held on in spite of, going over the tip of the Baja California Sur as a small hurricane too. So the system has also defied most track forecasts that the NHC has put out, because the NHC clearly has this over the other side of the peninsula, and now it is approaching, actually about to reemerge over the Baja California, the bay of sorts. I forgot what this is called. And this is unfortunate because if you look at the sea surface temperatures in here, it's ridiculous. These are extreme sea surface temperatures. You can even see like some spots of almost 32 degrees Celsius, which is almost 90 degrees. I think it's a little more than 90 degrees in some areas, but obviously this re-emerging over the bay here, this is really bad because this has pretty much these are hotter. These sea surface temperatures are hotter than the Gulf of Mexico, and the Gulf of Mexico is, one of the well-known places where hurricanes can really just explode. And the thing is that the system is so small that its entire body can fit into this bay. And so we could see a lot of intensification go on in here while it is over, and it is going to reemerge. This is largely a northward jog that we're seeing here. Don't ignore the jump to the north, but this is actually a northward jog, and it will eventually reemerge over this kind of cape here, and this little kind of lagoon of sorts. And once it does that, I really don't see anything inhibiting this thing's intensification. It has a pretty good outflow channel to the north and east, and that is largely due, if you take a broader look, you have a trough in here that's digging in and is really pulling this thing. It's kind of the reason why this track forecast that originally was issued by the National Hurricane Center when it was down here ultimately was pretty erroneous. And that's just because this trough was much stronger than forecast and could actually take it over the bay. And I mean, this is kind of serious for Western Mexico here. And if you look at the warnings here, you have tropical storm watches just in case it does in fact move over the bay, and that's seeming more likely. So they could actually put up hurricane watches and maybe even hurricane warnings. And you also have tropical storm warnings and hurricane watches on the eastern side of the peninsula here. And this would be bad because this is pretty much uninhibited intensification. It's, as I said earlier, smaller systems. Look at how tiny this system is. This is small. It actually doesn't even. It has made landfall, as you can see on the infrared loop, but yeah, it clearly has made landfall. But it is now moving almost to the north, and will eventually start moving to the northeast, depending on how much influence this trough has. And obviously, since it is moving closer to the trough, it likely will have a little more influence on the system. And ignore this. This is Mario. This is not really doing anything. It's kind of just sitting out here and stuff. But this is also, you can actually see the moisture channel that this is providing for the West Texas folks that actually do need a lot of rain because of this pretty bad drought that's in here. But Lorena, I mean, this probably could defy a lot of odds, or all odds here, and, intensify a lot more than what the National Hurricane Center's forecast has. And this is largely because they have it moving over land. If it moves over water, I would expect a much, much stronger system. And the GFS model has a weird kind of intensity for this, and I don't think that is valid if it does take that track, because if you look at the GFS model, I'm going to turn to the Eastern Pacific here. You can see that it takes it over the bay, and there's not a whole lot of land interaction in here, so I don't see why it doesn't intensify it more in the short amount of time that it has. And really, time is the only limiting factor here for Lorena, and unfortunately, I don't think it'll need much time in order to intensify. And I'm actually going to check the hurricane model on Lorena here, see what they have it at, 982 millibars. And the thing with smaller systems is that their pressures tend to be higher, but they tend to have the same amount of strength as a larger system with the same amount of strength or lower pressures. So this could be, and actually this is not even verified because they found lower pressures in the recon data today. So this looks like it probably will intensify a lot. And this is bad, but just stay prepared if you live in Mexico. I don't really have any viewers from Mexico, I don't think, but, obviously if this intensifies, it means more rain for West Texas, which is good, but at the cost of, people in Mexico that are probably going to get hit by this. So anyway, that's all for Lorena. Now we're going to go back to the Atlantic and talk about Jerry. Jerry, man, it's really kind of disappointing. And I'm not, I don't want this system to be strong at all. And I'm pretty sure no one does after Dorian and after Umberto here and after Imelda too. This system thankfully has taken on a lot of shear and is relatively decoupled. You have this mid-level area of moisture and circulation that's happening, but you have a lower level center that's a little further south, and you can see this so mid-level center is somewhere near 21 north, and if you look at Jerry's actual center, you can see it's closer to 20 north, and it's looked at the 3 days. Yeah, see, they have it positioned a little further south and hasn't gained much latitude. So the system is a little displaced and decoupled. So this is not really great for intensification. You'll see a lot of this just incredible convection that's being fired over the system, but you notice that it is not spinning. And so that means that there's no lower level dictation of where this convection is going to go. And it's not, radially rotating around any eye or any, center. This is just convection. And this is good for the storm because it's kind of ventilating it. You can see that outflow is beginning to stretch out here. But the system is also getting crushed in the mid-levels. And if you look at water vapor imagery here, it's really, you can see the shear is really starting to pick up on this. And notice that the outflow is not really well organized. This new wave of outflow is going to be something to watch, but largely this outflow is not really doing much, and it's kind of just drifting along with it. It's not really expanding out in any of the quadrants, so that's, not really great for the system. And if you look at the track forecast for Jerry, if we're going to go back to that, you can see they actually keep it relatively weak here. They do have a hurricane grazing Bermuda, and we've pretty much determined that the system is going out to sea. This is the European ensemble runs, and it unfortunately brushes past Bermuda a week after Umberto passes Bermuda. But this is not going to affect the United States. There are a couple of ensembles that have weird track forecasts, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And even the UK Met, which does a better job with Jerry and does a better job with overall track, really has this kind of moving out to sea. And I mean, Newfoundland is in a couple of these. If you go back, Newfoundland is in a little bit of the strain, but I think these ensembles were also the strain that had this going into Florida. You still have some that are going into Florida. I don't know why. I think it's the way that they verify the ridge that is to the north of Jerry. And if you look at the overall water vapor loop, you can see a ridge is trying to build here, but this ridge is pretty much non-existent. The ridge is over here. And so it's not really going to do a whole lot for the system to like push it west. So, and I think they build the blocking ridge, they like supercharge it for some reason, and there's nothing that's going to be able to do that. So those runs are probably wrong. So anyway, we're going to get to 99L here, which if you go to Weather Nerds and go to the guidance here, you got AL99, and you can see not every model picks this up, not everything picks this up, but you can see this is a pretty weird track, and this is largely because of the weakness that Jerry creates as it moves over the Atlantic. And you can see that Jerry kind of continues this weakness to the north of, because it aligns with this trough and extends the influence of this trough a little longer. And so what's going to happen is that Jerry is going to continue this trough, as I said, and ultimately 99L will be forced to, go up because there's no ridging over here that's going to keep it west, and not a whole lot of lower level flow that's going to be keeping this going. And you can actually see the shear that is going to kind of hamper the system for a while before it gets further west and may start to intensify a little bit. But this is a very large circulation and really just a gyre. So it's kind of hard to see this, consolidating rapidly, and like Jerry did last night. But we'll watch it, and this is primarily a rainmaker for Puerto Rico because of how long it will be over there. Just because of, look at how big this thing is. But thankfully, it will not be very strong, I don't believe. But obviously, any system hitting Puerto Rico, especially on the 2-year anniversary of Maria, and which was today, really would not be good because their power grid is still pretty weak. But right now, kind of just watching this thing, it has a pretty good shot at developing. If you look at the National Hurricane Center, gives it a 40% chance of development, and regardless of whether or not this develops, really, you even see it in the National Hurricane Center, they say heavy rainfall is possible. And this is primarily a flood threat. And how strong this gets could actually dictate a little bit of Jerry's track, because we don't know how close this is going to be to Jerry. We don't know how large this is going to end up being if it does develop, because ultimately development leads to some consolidation of the system. So, we don't know. But I think that this duo here is probably going out to sea. And Jerry, it's almost an absolute certainty, because look at this trough. There's not a ridge that's building in fast enough to take this out or move it to the west. It would be really shocking if this, was able to move west. And yeah. But anyway, we're going to talk about this system for like 5 seconds because I'm bored. So we've got a disturbance here that is not yet entered the water and is exiting Africa within the next few days. But this one, if we go back to the Atlantic, why are we looking at Lorena? Really just, quickly develops here and actually becomes a pretty powerful system. GFS has this almost as a hurricane, and you can see the monster weakness that Jerry creates. And notice that Jerry also gets a lot larger. This is partially due to the ingestion of another system. You can see that 99L ultimately gets ingested into this, and just is a really large weakness that develops here. And you can see that, what would be Karen will likely go out to sea in this situation, but we still got a lot of time before this happens, because if you look at the timestamp, this is 198 hours. So a lot of things can change. You know, Umberto was forecast to do this with Jerry, and it has succeeded in doing so, but we don't know. This has changed a lot, but it's pretty certain. And, you know, I mean, you have different GFS runs, and most of them have a pretty strong hurricane, and a stronger hurricane would tend to recurve in this situation because of the weaknesses in the ridge. But we'll see. And this is kind of just a long-term look-see. So that's all for tonight. I'm very tired. I'm going to go sleep, and I'll be in Houston, so I might, have Berlizzi on my next video. We'll see if he wants to talk about the weather. But anyway, see you guys. Thanks for watching, and be sure to always refer to the National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service offices for any decisions regarding any system in the future, because Jerry's not going to do anything. And credit goes to Tropical Tidbits. Anyway, good night.